right, we will go ahead and get started. We'd like to welcome Adam Scott to the interview room here at the Genesis Invitational. Adam, two-time champion here. What's it like to be back at Riviera?
Yeah, thanks. I love coming back to Riviera. It's my favorite stop on tour every year, and good feelings for me around this place, especially out on the golf course. It was nice to play this morning, even though it was an incredibly challenging morning. It was nice to be back on the track and a place I'm very familiar with, and looking to kind of get my season going here this week.
Speaking of your season, we haven't seen you since the Hawaii swing. What have you been up to?
I went back to Australia for a month, which was very nice. I haven't spent much time at home the last 2.5 years, so to have that month was, it felt very good, and a little time to catch up with some people I haven't seen and be down there with my family. So I was able to prepare pretty well the last couple of weeks, and it's coming into the spring now is a big time of year for golf and a good time to be playing well, so hopefully kind of lift my game a little bit and get some momentum going.
Great. With that, we will open up to questions. If you have a question, please raise your hand. We're going to start, I think that's Dylan. Is that right? Back.
Hey, Adam. It was a year ago, I guess, that you were sitting up here and you and a lot of other guys on tour were kind of trying to figure out what was going on in the landscape of professional golf. And I was just wondering if, thinking big picture about what's happened in the last year, how you see the landscape now.
Well, what was kind of being talked about has happened. I guess in some way there's been some movement, but it's still all very early days. I mean, the landscape has changed a little bit. There's been some significant changes at the top level of the pro game, and I don't really think we've seen how it's all going to shake out yet. I think we've got to have a longer term outlook to see, and I've kind of taken the view that I think eventually positives will come from it all, even though it's fairly turbulent waters at the moment.
Does this year feel different than last year? Given its, designated status and there's some different guys here and
I think this particular tournament had some elevated status already. The 3 invitationals were held in high regard by the players, but also by the bigger exemptions and things like that. So this tournament, the last several years, has certainly had that elevated feel about it. Now it's obviously designated and has a bigger purse as well. So, I mean, it's good to be here this week, yes.
We're going to go front right to Todd right here.
Adam, Rory, and Tiger have spoken this week about hearing from all the membership about their concerns, both at the top and in the middle, about opportunities and access. Now with your position on PAC, how important is it for you to listen to what the middle of the pack guys have to say, and what are your concerns for them and what you're hearing from them about this not being a have and have not situation for them?
Yeah, we've had one PAC meeting so far this year, so I'm new to it all. So I'm trying to do what you said and listen and absorb and understand the picture as a whole. And I think that's ultimately what every member of the tour needs to do, to have a good perspective so we can make the best decisions going forward from our executives who are going to make the final calls and put into action the plan of attack going forward. But the tour is not going to be able to be all things to all people. It just can't. And I think the best thing we can do now is establish a good balance between what the top players have been pushing for and what the membership should be as a whole. And I think that's very achievable. I don't think it's unreasonable, but getting that balance right is going to take a little bit of time and finessing.
Doug, and then Dan.
Has anyone called you Mr. Chairman yet? Is it too soon for that?
I demand it, Doug, so no.
Chairman Scott, on that point, what is the most difficult part of achieving the balance that you're talking about? And is there any concern, in a very big picture point of view, of a feeling of haves and have-nots on this tour, and any bitter feelings?
I don't have that. I don't have that concern. I think the hardest part of achieving the balance is having a big group accept change, and we're not very good at that generally, I would say, especially as individual professional golfers that make decisions for themselves most of the times. I think realizing this is a really, really one of the times of change in the professional game, and things are going to have to change, and people in all positions on the tour are going to have to adapt to whatever that is in the future. I think that'll be when we can accept that balance.
I go back left to Dan.
As a guy who's been on the tour for a lot of years, you mentioned all this change that's happened recently. Was there ever talk of this kind of stuff 10 or 15 years ago? And you guys ran into roadblocks, or was it just things are pretty good, so let's just keep it going?
I think, it's hard to even remember 10 or 15 years ago, to be honest. I think...
About like 5.
Yeah.
10.
No, well, there's been a lot of stuff up in the air the last 5 years, but I think some people could probably see the balance of things getting a little out trending in a direction, certainly, and I would agree with that over the years. There's definitely been a very large focus on playing opportunities out here, and that's been a fantastic business model for the PGA Tour, but the situation and the landscape, whatever we're going to call it, has changed a little bit, and we have to pivot and adjust and think about what's best for the PGA Tour product going forward, and that's what the tour is doing, and the board and everybody who is involved is discussing all of that to try and find the best solution.
Yeah, and then unrelated, Tiger and Rory were both saying that they have a hard time picturing themselves playing golf tournaments when they don't feel like they can win them. And obviously, with you winning the Masters, you're exempt there for as long as you want to play. Do you see yourself being one of the guys who plays until they're 65 years old and shoots 80, 78 and calls it a week?
I hope I can do better than that at 65, but you might be right. That might be one tournament. They might have to ask me to stop playing. I'm going to probably try and milk that exemption as long as I can, but I think I've got a fair few years left in me yet.
Okay, we're going to go back right to Jeff.
Adam, becoming chairman and getting involved in this, it's not something maybe some of us would have expected for you, and you're still a very good player. Do you worry about getting involved in this and it impacting your game in any way? And what is the state of your game?
I think I'm not worried about that. I think there's been this is my industry. This is my profession, and whether I'm involved because I'm sitting on the pack or whether I'm a member of the tour, with everything going on last year, it was taking up space in my life, in my job, and I have opinions, and whether I was sharing them publicly or not, I still thought about all this stuff going on, and as things have played out, the opportunity was there to go on the pack this year, and I took it, and I felt hopefully I can contribute something to that committee this year. So I'm not really worried that the time I've committed to that is going to have any negative impact on my game. I spoke to Rory a little bit, and it had an incredibly positive impact on his game last year, so I'm hoping for the similar kind of result. But the state of my game's always pretty good, it seems, at the moment. I've just, I was close at the back end of last season to kind of lifting it up to a level where I feel like I'm a serious contender, and I'd like to kind of pick up on that. If not this week, then in the next couple of weeks, going into, the big time golf that we have the next few months. Everything's in a good spot. I just have to do a little better. I've made a few adjustments, in equipment, in doing a job share with the caddy this year, things I think that are going to all have positive impacts on my game, and hopefully I know what I'm doing at this point.
Okay, we're in the middle. Sean?
When we were talking with Rory maybe a half hour ago about the decisions and how the PGA Tour is going to look in the future and the product, he referenced the NBA and the growth model of the NBA, and I'm just curious, as you sit in PAC meetings and take on this role, if there is an entity in business or in sports that you really think is worth it for the PGA Tour to emulate and try and replicate the success of.
I'm probably not as familiar with the other major leagues over here as Rory, but the major sporting leagues over here do very well, so I think there are probably aspects of all of them we should look at. And the NBA has done very well. I think, the way I see it is, we've had Tiger Woods for the longest time, and Tiger's definitely on the back end of his career now, and so how are we going to roll out a popular product with less and less Tiger in the future? And I think that's an important thing for us to think about as a tour.
We'll go right here to Doug.
Kind of a Tiger and a you question. Your record here is quite known with 2 wins or 1.5, however you look at it. Couple, 4 or 5 other really good chances. You take Tiger even during his young and healthy and peak years. I think he's only had 1 chance to win in 11 tries. How do you explain that in terms of what is it about this course that allows success for some and not for others?
He's a really great iron player, and you have to be a good iron player to play well here, I think, but it's maybe an anomaly and the only one in his whole career, maybe. It's a little bit unexplainable. I don't know what to say about that. I mean, over his career, there's been only strengths, really, and this course is quite demanding, certainly from the second shot in. And he's certainly capable of handling it. I don't know if he just doesn't feel it here or what it is. But I'll share some tips with him if he shares some tips on how to win a few majors with me. I think I like the shapes of the holes, and I have generally I hit the ball well, and I think if you hit the ball well into these greens, it's a huge advantage. The pressure comes off if your proximity's a little bit closer than average, because putting is difficult here. If you miss greens, scrambling can get difficult here. And just so happens a lot of the years I've come in playing quite well, but I get out there and I think I swing better and better as I play around Riviera. It's just one of those courses that suits my eye.
Bring it to Bob.
Adam, does it seem like 10 years since the Masters, and has the time after winning it, did you feel that there was an urgency to try to get more quickly while you were, sort of at the top of the game, and how do you feel that window evolved for you?
I guess it's starting to feel like a long time, a decade since winning, especially with the last few years. I think they're kind of a bit of a blur as well, and I don't feel there was much productive golf for me in that time, unfortunately. But I definitely felt a sense of urgency when I won. I felt like it was my time, and the next few years I continued to play really well in the majors, and I definitely let a couple good opportunities late on Sundays slip. And, if I was not even close to feeling like I could get back there, I'd be feeling worse about it now. But I don't think I'm that far away from getting back to that kind of contending level. So, I'm optimistic about what I can do this year and beyond. For the moment, I'm healthy. I'm still hitting it well. My putting has been the most consistent the last 3 years, and the stats are looking good. So every area is in a good spot. I just maybe need to narrow my focus a little bit. And I feel like making East Lake last year and allowing myself to take the pressure off and focus on what I want to focus on this year has been a good thing for me.
We're going to go back to Jeff.
Adam, what is the status of your caddy this week? Has he made it?
Not yet.
Not yet.
I think he's
Okay.
a couple of hours out still. So,
What, whether he makes it or not, what does Steve Williams do for you? Is it a personality thing? Does the atmosphere change? Does he make you focus differently?
I think it's an intensity thing. He's a pretty intense guy, and whether it was working for me or working for any other pro, whether he's competing at driving his race car or whether he's raking the leaves off his lawn at home, he's an intense character once he gets his mind on something, and I think that's a good compliment for my character out there. And at this point in my career, I dabbled once before with a job share, but I think I'm owning my game a little bit more. I know what I need to do. I know where everything's at. I can manage it well myself, and having kind of the freshness between a couple of guys I really respect on the bag is going to be a real positive for me this year. At this point, I feel like whether I'm playing good, bad, or indifferent, I don't want to get in the feeling like this is a grind. It shouldn't be a grind for me. It should all be exciting and fun, and seeing a guy for a couple of weeks and then not seeing him for 8 weeks certainly has that. And Steve caddied for me for 2 events in Australia at the back end of last year. And the first day out there, he doesn't change a lot. So I knew what I was getting, and we slipped back into the rhythm really quickly. And we had a good couple weeks, and I expect that to happen out here as well. And, having him come out fresh at this point, it's just funny how at different times of your life, he's now hit a point where his kid's grown up and probably doesn't want to hang with dad quite as much, and he's itching to get back out here as much as he'd hate to admit it. It's in his blood to be out here and caddy, and he loves it, and I'm pleased that we're going to have the opportunity to do a bit more together.
We're going to go here to the left with Ryan, over on the left.
Hi, Adam. You mentioned just there owning your game, and you're someone who's really led a trend on tour with being not sponsored by anybody when it comes to your equipment. Do you see that becoming more of a trend with the amount of money involved in the game at this point, or for you is it just the ability to have the pick and choose kind of who you work with?
It could be. I mean, it's happening a little bit more, maybe with some notable names, but I think there's always been players who have been unattached to equipment manufacturers. I still have, the only relationship I have to use equipment is still with Titleist, and I've had a relationship with them now since I turned pro, so I'm not completely unattached. But Yeah, I think I'm at a point in my career where I know what I like and I know what I want, and I feel like I can sacrifice some financial things to make sure I get exactly what I want in my bag and play the best and be in the best headspace and do all those things. You know, I can't speak for how other guys view it, but I got to that point where I felt that freedom would be good for me, and I feel so far I've managed that fairly well. Because there are a lot of options if once you, open up that Pandora's box of equipment.
We're going to go front right here.
Hi, Adam. I'm just wondering how a typical day of practice, like what it looks like for you now, and how that's kind of evolved through your career and the kind of motivation level you have to practice right now.
Yeah, well, the last couple of weeks I practiced quite a lot, and leading up to that I was trying not to practice so much. I mean, I think I like practicing, but the reality is I can't just stand and beat balls all year round. It's probably not productive for my best golf and probably not productive for an older body as well. So the last 2 weeks I worked pretty hard, and I probably had 2 days of the week where I hit a lot of balls on the range, and the other 4 days of the week I spent a lot more time, 100 yards and in, and honestly that's probably now where I identify I should spend most of my time, and certainly at tournaments I should stay off a driving range and worry about chipping and putting. I feel like I'd mentioned before, I kind of own my game a little bit more. I'm owning my swing a little bit more, and just need to stay sharp in the areas that the touch comes and goes a bit more.
All right, as we wrap up, we'll go right here.
You talked about how this course fits your game a lot. This course saw a record amount of rain over the winter, and it's going to be very cold this week. Do any of those affect your approach this week?
It's hard after playing out there this morning to think about it because it was so brutal. But it's not it might be playing slightly slower in the fairway, but you wouldn't really know that it's taken a record amount of rain. It's in very good condition, and the greens are certainly not soft. I've seen them much softer, so they've done a hell of a job to dry the course up. But in this wind, it becomes very demanding. The Kikuyu and the fast, slopey greens in the wind doesn't leave you a lot of places to land the ball. So that will be the challenge this week. I think if the wind's up, you're going to have to be leaving the ball in areas where you can actually chip it close. And, that's the beauty of a well-designed golf course, is strategy comes into it when it's not just still and perfect conditions. And that'll certainly be the challenges this week.
All right, Adam, thank you so much for your time. Good luck
Thanks.
this week.
Thank you.
We'll have Tony Finau up shortly.